All right, guys, among all the bad news, we got some good news to actually look forward to. So we need to discuss what that good news is. One, QT is ending. QT has been going on for several years now, which means the Fed's been basically contracting its balance sheet, dumping more onto the market, dumping more securities onto the market, which obviously restricts the money supply. Well, that's over, folks. That's over as of December 1st. Of course, that's because the economy is slowing down, unemployment rates are going up. So the Federal Reserve officially announced that it would conclude its program of QT, or quantitative tightening, or its reduction of its aggregate securities holdings on December 1st, 2025. The reduction of Fed's aggregate securities holdings will conclude as of December 1st. Obviously, that's going to allow more money into the market. If the Fed isn't selling some of its securities and reducing its balance sheet, there's less on the market, driving demand up. That is generally good for all investments markets, including ours. So that's one thing to actually be very, very bullish about. I definitely think that's going to help us. In addition to that, several people have been talking about stealth QE or reverse repos. The government's actually going to buy back some bonds, inject money into the market, and that will actually push the price of our investments and cryptos up. Now, they're not going to buy cryptos, they're buying bonds, but generally that is more liquidity into the investment market, and that helps all investments. With that extra liquidity, I think some of it will eventually flow to crypto. That, along with the end of quantitative tightening, should actually be a big boost in 2026 for the crypto investment market. QT and basically like lack of stealth QE or any kind of QE has really been shellacking us and killing us over the last few years. I think it's part of the reason, outside of Trump's tariffs, that we haven't actually gone up that much, especially in terms of alts. And I think some of that will 100% be helpful. So yes, the Fed doing reverse repo, which is kind of like their stealth way of injecting some money into the system without actually saying, we're writing you stimulus checks, or we're just like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It's kind of like a secretive way. I mean, most people know about it. Most everyone knows about it, but it's less outright. So I guess people won't be as pissed off about it and not be afraid of inflation if they're doing it kind of like incognito instead of out in the open. We all know what's going on, but still pretty good. Third, I think this election essentially solidified a stimulus. Let me explain how that works. The Republicans lost bigly on these elections. Yes, they could say it's Democrats voting for Democrats in Democratic states, but that's not completely true. It's also because of the margin of victory. I'll give to you that the New York election was always going to be Magdani. I had no doubts that Magdani was actually going to beat Cuomo. Cuomo was not really a greatly viable candidate. Plus, you had Sliwa running in there. So pretty much that was a given. New York is kind of irrelevant to the national scene. But the Virginia one is very, very telling. Spamberger beating the Republican candidate. Now, Virginia, yes, they do vote a Democrat in presidential elections, but not so much for gubernatorial elections. Remember, the current governor of Ohio is a Republican, Glenn Youngkin, and he actually won by about 2% in the last election. So Virginia, in terms of governors, they vote both for Democratic and Republican governors. So essentially, right now, they went from Youngkin +2 or R +2 to Spamberger +15 or D +15. That's like a 17-point shift, and that matters a lot. Virginia is especially telling because of its proximity to DC, and it's not really like it's not really a toss-up state. It's definitely a lean Democratic state in presidential elections, but in terms of governor elections, it is definitely a toss-up state. Now, you could just say the Republican candidate was really, really bad and was destined to lose, but in a lot of these things, it really depends on how people view the president. How do they think things are actually going? And at least Virginians which will reflect on the rest of the country, don't think things are going spiffily right now. So they basically swapped out a Republican governor for a Democratic one by a really large margin. Now, I personally thought Spanberger was going to win. I thought she was going to win by 3 or 4 points, but her margin was over 15 points, which basically outperformed all the polls. So I think most of the polls had her up like 8 or something. I thought it was going to be much closer, but it actually ended up being much, much further off. And the GOP candidate basically was more or less a Trumper. So that really didn't work out in terms of the campaign. So that and other elections, like, the Democrats maintained all 3 of their seats in Pennsylvania, which all 3 of their judicial seats on the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania. And Trump's been kind of pushing for that because he wants this Pennsylvania Supreme Court to be leaning Republican, obviously, but all 3 Democrats actually kept their seats. And of course, some of the other, like smaller elections that you didn't hear about, like in Georgia and in some of the other places, plus California's Prop 50 passing by an overwhelming margin. They basically lost every single race last night. And that is kind of like a signal on what the country actually thinks about the current administration and how they think things are actually going. And that does not bode well for the midterm elections, which are going to happen in a year. Now, he needs to boost up his approval rating. He needs to make people like him. How does he do that? Well, make it rain, baby. Give people money. So that's where the stimulus comes in. If he's going to need to buy some votes. I mean, like, Trump's not stupid when it comes to politics. He knows that if there's nothing going on and they have a midterm like right now under these conditions, he's going to lose. And in a year, it's probably not going to get better. I don't really see the economic situation getting better. But he can change people's minds by giving them a stimulus in the summer. My guess is the stimulus will be somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000. And that's definitely going to offset the cost of some of the increases in goods caused by the tariffs, obviously. Now, his tariffs, hilariously enough, could actually be declared illegal. That's actually fighting the Supreme Court right now, and the Chief Justice, Roberts, is very, very suspicious about Trump's reasoning of declaring an emergency and then imposing those tariffs. Now, what's happening there is that I'm pretty sure the 3 liberal judges are going to vote against Trump. I think Roberts is leaning towards voting against Trump as well because he seems very skeptical of Trump's reasoning for randomly declaring emergencies. Kavanaugh seems to be more pro-Trump because he's essentially like leaning towards the Nixon administration, and Congress did actually allow Nixon to impose certain tariffs. I'm pretty sure Gorsuch, Thomas, and the other guy are going to be voting for Trump. So interestingly, I think Barrett is actually going to have the deciding vote, and I'm not really sure what she thinks right now. So I still think it's 50-50 whether they actually declare that illegal or not. But that's kind of regardless of the tariffs declared illegal or not, he's going to most definitely give us a stimulus to change people's opinions, to tilt it more towards him. Now, he's going to try to frame it as like this is tariff money, but it's really going to be printed money. But to us, it doesn't actually matter whether it's tariff money or printed money, because it's money, and some of that money is going to go into crypto and pump crypto. So I think that's probably going to happen next summer, along with massive rate cuts. You know that Trump has been basically like lighting a fire under Jerome Powell's ass, or trying to at least, for him to do massive rate cuts. And Powell, for his part, has gone with the plan. He's cut rates twice this year. He might cut once more in December, pending on whether the government opens up or not. He might not cut again if the government doesn't open back up because he doesn't have any data. And he's very reluctant to move without actually any data. So we definitely have something there that might actually be something to look forward to. And we're not talking about 25 basis point cuts. We're talking about 75, 100 basis points cuts. Like, Trump basically wants the interest rate down to like 1%, 2% at least, but maybe 1%. Now, 1% would be a horrible idea, like essentially long term, but in the short term, that would make money a lot easier to borrow, and that would get more people to borrow more money to put into cryptocurrency. So that could be quite a boost for us too, and that might happen starting in June of next year because Powell is stepping down in May. Powell's not going to go crazy cutting interest rates while he's in office, but Trump's guy is basically going to be doing whatever Trump tells him to. And if Trump tells him to cut the interest rate 100 basis points, he will cut the interest rate 100 basis points. And that could definitely give us a boost before we come catastrophically crashing down. But that one boost, that massive boost in the moon, might be all we actually need. And of course, the government opening back up will actually, I think, give us a boost as well. I don't think the numbers are going to look too bad when the government opens back up. Remember, like there's going to be some back pay for federal workers. Some of that back pay, since they have just a sudden surge of money from what they were owed, could actually go into crypto, and that would definitely help our market as well. And the last thing, and probably the least important thing in terms of price, but maybe important for future development of crypto, is clarity. The government is shut down right now. It will open back up, hopefully before Thanksgiving. And when it opens back up, I do think bills like the clarity bill for crypto will actually pass. Now, that won't do anything for the price immediately, but it opens up the way for crypto adoption and crypto development for certain projects in the future. And I think it makes businesses more confident in cryptocurrency. So that is kind of a big deal as well. So with that, that could actually be like the start of more of a long-term uptrend in crypto adoption, assuming they can actually find use cases for crypto, which could honestly be kind of difficult. So I'm pretty sure like as soon as the government opens up and they vote on it, clarity will actually pass. Probably take a couple of months to get everything hammered out. But that is the last thing that could definitely trigger crypto for a more bullish market in the future. So that's like 5 or 6 things that crypto has to look forward to and that you should actually be bullish about. Once again, we have the end of QT that's happening December 1st, reverse repo, a stealth QE that's probably going to happen around the same time. We also have the stimulus, which will probably happen like next summer because Trump needs to buy votes, seeing how the off-year election went like last night. Of course, you got rate cuts because Trump's going to appoint his guy and his guy's going to cut rates. And of course, you have clarity bill passing, which gives the green light for crypto development. So despite all the doom and gloom, you still got a lot of things to look forward to. And a lot of those things are culminating next year. So we might actually get that bullishness next year. So let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.